Good evening and welcome to the program The Nigerian Governors Live, reaching you from our Abuja studios here in the Federal Capital Territory. My name is Aon Duna Inga. Today we're going to be looking at a pretty interesting topic. Many political observers had thought that the era of godfathers or godfatherism in Nigerian politics had come to an end with the seeming rejection of Pastor Ize-Iyamu at the polls in Edo State last year. Recall that Pastor Ize-Iyamu was backed by the former governor of the state and APC chairman Mr. Adams Oshomole. The choice of Mr. Omo Eno, Akwa Ibom State Commissioner for Lands as Governor Dom Emmanuel's preferred candidate for the 2023 gubernatorial election has divided the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in the state. The immediate past secretary to the state government, Biodun Oyebanji, I'm talking about Ekiti State, has emerged the winner of the All Progressives Congress APC governorship direct primary election in Ekiti State. Well, these are just some of the examples you need to know, just like a teaser into what we are going to be talking about. Today on the program, we are looking at the topic, Nigerian governors and godfatherism, on the unending political culture. I have my guest here in the studio already, and I will be introducing him to you in a short while. But until then, let's go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get right into our discussions. Stay with us.
The Nigerian governors.
Thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining the program, it is the Nigerian Governors Live. It is often said that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. And my guest in the studio today is quite young, and we are going to be delving into this topic, talking about the Nigerian governors and godfatherism and unending political culture. He's not the person, but Mr. Enejo Peter. He's an economist. Okay, Mr. Enejo James. All right, Enejo James, thank you for that correction. My guest today is Mr. Enejo James. He's an economist and a member of the National Consultative Front. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today, Mr. Enejo.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I recall that some time back there was an arrangement for us to have a conversation like this, but unfortunately one or two things happened and that wasn't possible. But then I'd like to feel your pulse, first of all. Before the start of the show, I reeled out a couple of examples of godfatherism that Nigerians are aware of. Now, particularly when you look at the elections in Edo State and how prominent that conversation was in the public space, one will wonder that we have gone past that era where some selected persons or an individual would choose an individual who he feels should handle take over the responsibility of state governance. What is your take on the whole concept of godfatherism to start with?
Well, okay, thank you for having me. And it was unfortunate that we couldn't meet up the last time, but thank God opportunity still comes. Godfatherism, I would like to be clear on something. Godfatherism in politics cannot be taken off.
Really?
Yes, yes, it's a debate. It cannot be taken off. Now, that's because the godfatherism in politics, to me, is my opinion. It's like mentorship. It should be a mentorship pattern. There's always what I call the Nigerian factor attached to things. We always go extreme, always go far. There's nothing wrong with having a mentor, even if it's a past, present, or would-be leader, mentoring somebody to come up. But the issue we now have with the Nigerian factor is, I'll use that word, the extent to which it is taken. It's always taken to the extreme. It has been taken to the extreme. Now, there's nothing wrong with having someone who will mentor you, who will train you, who will guide you. Now, there's something that I saw in the Holy Books. It said there's nothing new under the sun. What is already was. What will be already now is. So whatever you want to do tomorrow, people have already gone ahead. So it's okay to have somebody to guide you. But unfortunately, in the Nigerian setting, as we have seen, is greedy people wanting to have people to still have dominance over what they are supposed to have.
Isn't that the case? Isn't that the problem to start with? Because like you mentioned, interestingly, you made mention of the word mentorship. in the context of Nigeria and what people have seen and some of us have observed, is that necessarily a case of godfatherism? I'm thinking that there's a clear difference between the word godfatherism and mentorship.
Yes, well, you see, godfatherism, I want to put the two in the same translation, my opinion, though, and my definition of it.
Okay.
It's just like saying you have in business, you have a mentor. Mentor is not a role model. Now, mentorship is somebody that you can see, somebody you know, somebody who knows you, you have access to, who will guide you. This is how you go, this is what you do, this is how you do, but not necessarily dominating over your decisions, having a dominant force over what you do on how and dictating your moves, like what we have seen. It is on the streets out there that, like for example, former Lagos State Governor, the past Governor Ambode, that he was not playing to the cards of the Godfather. And then, you see, the context in Nigeria is what is making it the way it is, very bad. Now, you only advise. Godfathers are also just there to play advisory roles, not to dictate how you go. It is on the street at some point that governors have to remit certain percentage of revenues to the past. If you don't want to do that, you are out of the game. And then the so-called godfathers are interested in who is after their interest or who will protect their interest. Now, there's something I always say. It's not like our leaders don't know what to do. They know what to do. But for some certain reasons, maybe the greed in them, they know that they have done so many, they have so many track records of being, of bad deals. So they need somebody to come and cover up their tracks. So that is why godfatherism is now looking like a very bad thing. But if we have people who will just come, finish your tenure, you go.
But you know, Pete, and Joe, there are people who will disagree with you outrightly that godfatherism can actually be eradicated or done away with, but completely in our polity. I mean, you actually could see the slogan. I'm not on ground in Edo State, but you could see how people celebrated the fact that a certain person who was seemingly anointed, I mentioned the name, Pastor Isaiah, who was anointed by Edo State Governor, former Governor Adams Oshomole, and for the fact that he didn't make it into power in that regard alone, and lots of people felt that, look, this is something, the power has to go to the people. We can choose who we want to be as our leader or as our governor, as the case may be. So I put it to you that it's yet possible, going by the context of which you have defined godfatherism and mentorship, it is possible that we can eradicate godfatherism completely.
Well, I think it's proper to say that we can eradicate the extreme negative side of it. Now, I think, referring to Edo, we had this Edo no be Lagos. Yeah, Edo no be Lagos. I think that was when Tinubu was in, he went to Edo and some things, and they just said that Edo no be Lagos. Now, the point now is, if there was no shifting of camp, if the people were still comfortable with the one carrying the oil to do the anointing, it's not a problem. Now, see, that's why I said mentorship. Now, godfatherism to me, what I say to is like mentorship in politics. You understand? But where we have the problem now is people wanting to dictate for the so-called anointed ones. You dance to their tune, they play the music, they are the DJs, they are the sound producers, they're everything. You just be on the stage, just dancing. That is where we have the problem. So if we have people who will just leave power, go and sit down, if there's a problem, there's nothing wrong with consulting. To consult. Well, now, that's where so because of this issue, you now see that there are cases of states where godfatherism, you know, if you go to the West, I think it plays more in the West. It plays more in Southwest.
Okay.
That's godfatherism stuff. Yeah, it plays well, a little bit better there. If you go to South-South, it doesn't that much. We see the case of Amechi and Wike, and then mostly in the East where it seems everybody is a boss of himself. It is difficult to impose. We see the case of Rochas and his son-in-law, who he wanted to bring in. So there are cases where this issue of anointing somebody, it has failed.
But let's take a case look at the case of Governor Odom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom State. And looking at the fact that his commissioner for lands and for commissioner of lands had to kneel down before him. The pictures were everywhere, the videos were everywhere, kneel down, and that in itself has divided the People's Democratic Party in the state. Now, when confronted with this, Governor Emmanuel Odom claimed that, look, this gentleman, or Mr. Umo Eno, was chosen by God.
Okay.
When you hear things like that, how do you feel?
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's disheartening, actually. It's disheartening. Politics. I hope to see that day where Nigerian politics will shift to capacity and talk. Let's go to the poll. If you think you can deliver, I think the case of Anambra State, for example, you see the debate between the governor-elect, he has not been sworn in yet, the governor-elect, Soludo, and the other candidate, Ifeanyi Uba, during the debate. I wasn't hearing anything tangible from the Ifeanyi Uba's camp. Soludo was basically, he was here saying, I was the one that made you this, I was the one that did this. What do you want to come and do? Now, you see, it is disheartening the level of our politics, where it is. And for somebody to come and kneel, maybe age bracket, same age bracket, if he's not older than him, because you want a seat, as much as that should be questioned. Because the truth is, Nigerians and Nigeria were evolving, but our leaders have failed to see. Let me say, all they have seen, but they have failed to accept it.
How so?
Now, let me use an instance. If you see Edo, you see Anambra, you see a few states around, the people are now exposed to things that we were not used to before. And when the people want to then start maybe revolting, or they will now say it is opposition, they blame it on opposition. You know, things that happen in this country that is supposed to have woken up the conscience of leaders. That, okay, now, Nigeria, we are evolving, we are moving from where they know we used to be. They used to see us like one hungry people that are easily intimidated, you shout at them. For example, I know, regardless of how the NSAS ended, it's something that everybody will see. If you are a leader, if you are a visionary person, you will know that this country has changed. It's not the way it used to be. It's not business as usual. Anambra, for example, yes, it would have happened. They would have maybe done whatever they want to do. It didn't happen. Edo, it would have happened. And this is just a few. It's gradually moving. It's gradually moving. But the leaders are failing to see this. You can anoint somebody and the person will still fail. Now, the masses are now realizing that it's within their power to the electorate have the power to pick who they want. So if you anoint somebody who is not the people's choice, it may turn out that, yes, this election, it may work out, but I don't see that happening in 2032.
Okay, but let's look at the fact that governors will yet insist that some persons come in on their behest by the anointing or whichever way. Is it always about the fact that a state governor wants to cover certain secrets and then he decides to have somebody come in? Is it always about that? Or perhaps it's about continuity? Because like they say, it's continuum, and people have a tendency of coming into power and changing the course or the direction of a state in some cases. So as much as we want to look at this, or people will look at it as something which is negative, is there a possibility that because of some level of continuity, governors may feel it is better that, look, let me choose or have this individual come in to replace me? Could that be the case?
Intentions are hard it's hard to read, but we'll still work on it. If my own thinking, if it's continuity, what happened to the deputy governor? That's the person that you have been working with. It's somebody that knows you, he knows your activities in and out. Perhaps, maybe to our next time, maybe the chief of staff. maybe the chief of staff, because I think of recent time we now know that the chief of staff is a very powerful office. So you have people who knows your activities in and out. How much does the commissioner know of your activities? Now that's where we maybe want to question the intentions. So now, like this Akwa Ibom state, for example, the commissioner of land and
Commissioner of Land.
Of lands. You're bringing a commissioner of lands. How much does he know of your activities? So perhaps it's a myth. It's a myth. Intentions is difficult to check, but we just know that the anointing goes to who is loyal. If you show a little bit of stubbornness or a little bit of rebellion, they're going to discard you.
So does that imply that all deputy governors, interestingly you mentioned it, does that imply that all deputy governors are rebellious? Because in the past, over the past years, we've hardly seen a situation where a deputy governor succeeds the governor as governor of a state.
Well, it just depends on now you see, there are two things. Is the intentions is hard to read. Only God can see the intention of man, and maybe you, the person in question. So if we look at it, if you want to say continuity, that's me. I will say that, well, the deputy governors are there. They have more insight of the activities and the plans, because those are the people you campaigned with. The people that you rolled out a plan with. The commissioners you appointed later. You understand? Then, okay, chief of staff will maybe appointed later within as you want, but then he also got, he or she will get into the affairs of things and how they run. So I won't necessarily say that the deputy governors are rebellious. You understand? But I just know that what I'll just say is when it comes to the anointed one, they go for who they feel is loyal and is going to be totally submissive. Now there's an intent, or maybe perhaps for the side of the deputy governor, it's suspicious that, okay, if this person gets there now, he has been with me for 8 years, so he may want to do according to his own listing. We see like the case of Lagos State, for example. Sorry. Now he's supposed to go for. We know that Nigeria, if Nigeria is 8 years, so as it is now, is 8 years. Now, what happened? The other 4 years. I think it's on the street that, okay, some things he was doing, he wanted to start questioning authorities, he wanted to start being rebellious, and they had to take it out from him. That's what's on the streets. On the street. So the thing is, they go to who is going to be loyal and continue be so until your 8 years is over.
Now that's another interesting angle, because we have seen cases where over most of the time, these anointed candidates, when they eventually become governors, turn against their principles. We can see a case happening in Osun State, where Reboshola has a faction, and it cuts across so many states. We've seen Governor Tom, former governor, Governor Tom falling out with Akume of Benue State. There's always a friction at some point. So it's the godfatherism thing paying off in any way.
In Nigeria, it is not. It is not, because the burden is much. Okay, like I remember it was on the street that these things, okay, out of what you get in a month or monthly, you have to remit a quarter. Aside other things, appointments, you have to still consult, other things you have to still attend to. Now, this person in power, there's this saying that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, this young man that you anointed is now the chief security officer of the state. So he is the boss, he is the top. Now, you now wanting to come and play him around, it won't be easy. So that's where you have issues. Maybe for their fallout, it's my own myth. For their fallout, most of the time, it is the burden of following the demands of the godfathers. It's not helping in any way in this country. So far, there's no way. All the godfathers I can beat my chest so far that we have are people who are just after covering their tracks of records. They don't want to be investigated. Like there's something down that they said, I think Supreme Court or High Court made that the EFCC cannot investigate governors after they leave office. I don't know where that is coming from. Shouldn't investigate? What kind of ruling is that? So that means even if you come now, you want to investigate your predecessor, that means there's a law saying that you can't.
Because he was actually under executive powers, as the case may be, and had some immunity.
You understand? Now, after he leaves office, you can't. So it's not so that they can do whatever they want to do and they can get away with it. But the truth, the thing, one thing is, they can do whatever they want to do for now. It is changing. It has changed. It has changed. So I just know that within the next few years, they should be ready to accept the facts that the street is now woke. As the man saying, to stay woke is the focus. The street is now woke. And I want to say that we have two major contenders, two major political parties,
Yeah.
and the rest that are trying to meet up. Now, I will say this that Nigerians most of the time are currently, if you go to the street and you have conversations, they are after the candidates now, not the party. So except Nigeria being Nigeria, that we know currently,
Yeah.
I bet you that moving forward, all these godfathers will be shocked.
Okay, so you seem pretty confident about the fact that the political terrain is changing, particularly as regards the issue of godfatherism. But if you look at the activities, I don't know how often you go on Twitter, you see the interactions on Twitter, you discover that it still appears as though these people still hold sway. Those who have the resources to mobilize influencers and what have you, and largely these influencers are young people, so you begin to wonder, really, if you're talking about change, how possible is that? Because these same people who perhaps a couple of months ago were shouting and calling out certain people not to be in power are the same people right now still entertaining those certain individuals on certain political platforms and what have you. So is anything really going to change?
Nigerian factor. That factor is driven by greed.
Greed on whose part?
Now you see, the part of the politicians, the godfathers, now, and then the need to survive by the masses. Now, Nigeria now, most people are just focused on survival. Leave the day as it goes. Because the truth is, most people have given up on the political system as it works. Most people have given up on the political system. But I think there's a glimpse of hope from the Edo, Anambra cases.
Yeah.
Some people are now more interested. And then there's a fear of not dancing to the tune totally. Like I was speaking to that guy, I don't know if I can say, let me just use this instance. I was speaking with somebody about 2023 presidential election, and he said to me that, like, for him, he is working and mobilizing for it will be good if the current vice president contest. Talking about this godfatherism now. He said, but the problem now is that he needs to serve. But since he has not indicated interest, they cannot come publicly. And I said, okay, why do you think he has not indicated interest? He said, well, his godfather has indicated interest, so he has to serve. So now, is it the interest of the godfather or the interest of the masses? So if, for example, people now say, okay, this is the person who want to go, the godfathers should also learn to step aside. Now, greed on their part. Greed on their part. For example, I said, I don't know, maybe because of the extravagant lifestyle that they are living. You have the resources, you have everything. You should go and sit down somewhere and don't stress your old brain. Don't stress your old brain. Just go and sit down as one elder statesman and rest. Leave these things and advise. There's nothing wrong with advising. Not control. It even falls down. My fear, maybe before the show started, before we were discussing, my fear is for the future. Because what the young people are now learning from these ones, ours is total control. There are states where I can say boldly that there's no godfatherism.
Okay.
But things are not going so well. Yes, Kogi State, for example. Yes, no godfatherism. Because the system that brought the governor in is a system that defied and went against the godfather system. Otherwise, if for godfatherism, I believe the deputy governor that ran with the late Prince Abubakar Audu would have been the governor. Faleke would have been the governor. But the system went against that. And so I always tell people that the current governor is not a product of godfatherism. But now we see how well is that in the state? How well is it going for the people of Kogi State? How well is his tenure speaking for the people of Kogi State? That's if you go down there in the states. You think let's not dive into
But
that
on the
part.
final note, it's saddening that sometimes conversations like this will just have to come to an end. But on the final note, what does the future, because you made mention of the future, you made mention of the word service, and you are young. A couple of years ago, we had the Not Too Young to Run bill signed into law and what have you. We've seen young people who have emerged, even though not as governors, but some have emerged and have indicated interest in becoming even presidents of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Given all of this, putting all of this into context, the context of godfatherism or mentorship, as the case may be, what is the future? What does the future tell you, particularly even as we head towards 2023, for those running for offices of governorship or the president, as the case may be?
Well, the future regarding the context we're talking about now, godfatherism for the country, is in its ending stages. We're almost out of it. That's the extent to which Nigerians take it. That's how will I put it now? Forgive me. Extreme part of greed is showing, like it shows.
Yeah.
And well, for the future, as I always say, it's scary. It is scary, but we are optimistic. We are hopeful. And then I want to say that the current political parties, major political parties that we have, the APC and PDP, is one that is sunk in this system of godfatherism. I have a very terrible personal experience. Somebody who was running for State House of Assembly, winning the primaries, they just came up and said that the other person that is being defeated is the anointed one, and that was the end. That was the end.
So he was forced into a consensus.
That was the end. That was the end. So no, the thing is, APC, PDP, majorly right now. So I believe that with time, sorry, I want to go into that. With time, we're going to have perhaps a third force. I don't know, a third force who are going to show capacity, and people who are not greedy, people who are not after power, people who don't want total control.
Okay.
I think that's what I just have to say, because for the future it is scary. It's scary.
All right. For the future is scary, and perhaps we're optimistic, and perhaps there's going to be a third force. But who knows? We've been hearing about a third force for quite some time now in the Nigerian polity. But we'll wait to see how all of that will play out. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Enejo James, for coming on the program today.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Enejo James is an economist and a member of the National Consultative Front political pressure group. So thank you so much for being a part of the program today, the Nigerian Governor's Life. We'll be back next week with another interesting edition of the program as well. My name is Aonduna Ingia. Do have a pleasant evening.
The Nigerian governors.